title, Easter Shadows. In the quaint town of Eastwood, Easter was always a time of joy and celebration. The townsfolk would come together, sharing stories, laughter, and the excitement of the annual Easter egg hunt in the old Whitmore estate. This tradition, however, was shadowed by an eerie tale that had been passed down through generations. The Whitmore estate, once a grand and lively mansion, had stood abandoned for decades. It was said that one fateful Easter, the Whitmore family vanished without a trace. The only clue left behind was a set of beautifully decorated, yet ominously cracked, Easter eggs scattered throughout the house. Despite the chilling legend, the townsfolk continued their Easter festivities at the estate, drawn by the thrill and mystery that enveloped the place. This year, a group of adventurous friends, intrigued by the tales, decided to partake in the egg hunt, eager to explore the decrepit mansion. As they entered the estate, a chilling breeze whispered through the cracked windows, carrying faint echoes of laughter and distant cries. The friends, undeterred, split up to cover more ground, each armed with a basket and a flashlight. Sarah, one of the friends, stumbled upon a hidden room in the basement. The air was thick with dust, and the only light came from her flickering flashlight. On a dusty table, she found a collection of ancient Easter eggs, their colors still vibrant against the gloom. As she reached out to touch one, a cold hand clasped hers, pulling her into the darkness. Meanwhile, Alex ventured into the attic, where he found old family portraits with their faces scratched out, and an open diary belonging to the youngest Whitmore child. The diary spoke of a mysterious figure that visited them every Easter, bringing gifts and promises of eternal happiness. The final entry, however, was a frantic scribble. "He's not who he seems." Back in the garden, Emily and John discovered an overgrown path leading to a forgotten part of the estate. Following it, they came across a series of grotesque statues, each depicting a scene of horror and despair. At the center was a life-size statue of the Easter Bunny, its eyes seeming to follow them as they moved. As night fell, the friends regrouped, their excitement replaced by fear. They realized that Sarah and Alex were missing. Searching frantically, they called out their names, but only silence answered. The estate seemed to come alive in the darkness, with shadows twisting and turning, obscuring the line between reality and nightmare. The friends felt an unseen presence watching them, its intentions unknown. In the heart of the mansion, they found the remnants of an old Easter celebration, frozen in time. A feast lay untouched on the table, surrounded by empty chairs. At the head of the table sat 2 cracked Easter eggs, identical to the ones found by Sarah. The friends, now gripped by terror, knew they had to leave. But as they turned to escape, the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The laughter and cries grew louder, surrounding them as the shadows converged. The story of the friends' venture into the Whitmore estate would become another tale whispered in Eastwood, a chilling addition to the legend of the true Easter horror. The fate of the friends and the secrets of the estate remained shrouded in mystery, leaving an open door for the horrors to continue, perhaps next Easter. Continuing from where the previous segment left off, we delve deeper into the enigmatic and eerie events surrounding the small, isolated town of Eastwood during the Easter celebrations. In the wake of the mysterious disappearance of young Alice, the town of Eastwood was shrouded in an unnerving silence. The vibrant Easter decorations that adorned the streets seemed to mock the residents with their cheerfulness, a stark contrast to the growing dread that enveloped their hearts. Despite the best efforts of the local police, no trace of Alice or her abductor was found. The only clue was a cryptic note left at the scene, its message unclear and its meaning shrouded in mystery. As the investigation stalled, the townsfolk began to whisper of old legends and curses long forgotten. Stories were told of an ancient entity that dwelled in the woods surrounding Eastwood, a malevolent spirit that awoke every few decades to claim an innocent soul during the Easter celebrations. Skeptics dismissed these tales as mere superstition, but the older generations knew better. They spoke of similar disappearances from decades past, incidents that were never solved and eventually buried in the annals of town history. The atmosphere in Eastwood grew tense as Easter approached once more. Families held their loved ones a little tighter, and children were warned not to wander too far from home. It was then that Julia, a newcomer to the town, decided to take matters into her own hands. Armed with an insatiable curiosity and a keen investigative mind, Julia began to piece together the fragmented history of Eastwood's dark past. Her inquiries led her to the town's archives, where dusty tomes and ancient records spoke of a sinister pact made by the town's founders with an otherworldly presence lurking in the forest. This entity, known only as the Easter Shade, demanded a tribute every 50 years in exchange for prosperity and protection. The last recorded tribute was paid over 5 decades ago, aligning eerily with Alice's disappearance. As Julia delved deeper into the mystery, strange occurrences began to plague the town. Unexplained shadows flitted at the corner of one's vision. Children spoke of an imaginary friend who beckoned them into the woods, and an oppressive sense of being watched pervaded the town. The townspeople, already on edge, were quick to blame Julia for stirring up old ghosts, and tensions reached a boiling point. One night, as the full moon cast its eerie glow over Eastwood, Julia ventured into the woods, determined to confront the Easter Shade and put an end to the cycle of fear. Armed with nothing but a lantern and her unwavering resolve, she disappeared into the dense thicket, her silhouette swallowed by the darkness. Back in the town, the residents waited anxiously, their eyes fixed on the tree line, as a heavy fog began to roll in from the woods, enveloping Eastwood in a suffocating embrace. Whispers of concern turned to cries of panic as the hours passed with no sign of Julia. Just as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the fog, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the heart of the forest, silencing all who heard it. The story abruptly ends here, leaving the fate of Julia and the truth behind the Easter Shade shrouded in mystery. The dense fog that blankets Eastwood seems to hold its breath, as if waiting for someone brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to uncover the secrets it hides. The story remains open, a chilling reminder of the unknown that lurks just beyond the veil of our understanding, waiting for the next chapter to be written. continuing from where the previous story left off. The air was thick with a chilling silence, interrupted only by the occasional creak of the old wooden floors of the deserted townhouse. Emma and her friends, drawn by the allure of uncovering the true Easter horror stories that were said to plague this forgotten town, had unwittingly become part of the story themselves. As they delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding the eerie events of past Easters, they stumbled upon an ancient, dust-covered diary belonging to a man named Jonathan Harker. The diary entries were erratic, filled with frantic scribbles and ominous warnings about a ritual gone awry. A ritual intended to bring prosperity, but which instead unleashed a malevolent entity upon the town every Easter. Night had fallen, and the once inviting glow of the moon now seemed to cast menacing shadows throughout the room. The wind howled, as if whispering secrets long forgotten. Emma's heart raced as she turned the pages, each entry more disturbing than the last. The 3rd of April, 1891. The ritual, it was not as the elders described. We've awakened something dreadful. The 4th of April, 1891. The children, they went looking for Easter eggs in the woods today. Not all returned. Those who did, something's wrong with their eyes. They speak in whispers of a lady in white. The 5th of April, 1891. The town is in chaos. The entity, it demands a tribute each Easter. We tried to stop it, but it's too powerful. May God forgive us for what we've done. The entries stopped abruptly, leaving more questions than answers. Emma felt a cold dread settle in her bones. What had they awakened by coming here? The sound of her friends calling her name snapped her back to reality. They needed to leave now. But as they gathered their things, ready to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the house, they found the door they had entered through was now inexplicably locked. Panic set in as they frantically searched for another way out, only to find windows that wouldn't budge and doors that led to nowhere. Suddenly, a soft, haunting melody filled the air, its source indiscernible. The melody was sweet, yet carried an underlying note of despair. Emma's mind raced. Was this the lady in white the diary spoke of? The melody grew louder, more insistent. As the group huddled together, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. Their breaths became visible, hanging in the air like a warning. The music reached a crescendo, then stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. Then, in the dim light of their flashlights, they saw it, a shadow, tall and slender, moving at the edge of their vision. Was it real, or just a trick of the light? They dared not find out. The story ends here for now, leaving Emma and her friends trapped in the townhouse, their fate uncertain. The true Easter horror stories of the town remain unresolved. The malevolent entity still lurking, its intentions unknown. The door for a continuation is left wide open, with the mystery of the lady in white and the fate of the town's children hanging in the balance. Emma, her heart pounding in her chest, urged her friends to stay close as they cautiously circled the dimly lit room, their eyes darting to every corner, every shadow that could hide the source of the mysterious shadow. The silence was oppressive, the tension thick as they moved as one. A tight cluster of fear and anticipation. The flicker of their flashlights did little to cut through the dense atmosphere of dread that hung in the air like a tangible veil. The house seemed to breathe with a life of its own, groaning and whispering secrets in a language only it understood. Suddenly, a loud thump from the floor above jolted them, freezing them in their tracks. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps began to descend the staircase, each step heavy with an ominous intent. The group exchanged panicked glances, unsure whether to run or hide, their options limited by the locked doors and sealed windows. As the footsteps grew nearer, a cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing the candles they had lit and plunging them into darkness. The only light now came from their trembling flashlights, beams dancing frantically as they tried to locate the source of the sounds. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the footsteps stopped. Silence reigned once more, but it was a deceptive calm. The air was charged with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Emma, mustering all her courage, called out into the darkness, "Who's there? What do you want from us?" But the only answer was the echo of her own voice, bouncing off the walls, distorting into a sinister laugh that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The group huddled closer, their backs to each other, flashlights aimed outward like feeble shields against the unseen menace. That's when they noticed it, a slight movement in the shadows, a whisper of fabric, a glimpse of white. The lady in white from the diary? It was impossible to tell. The figure too quick, too elusive. As they stood, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, the house around them seemed to come alive. Doors slammed shut. The sound of glass shattering upstairs. The whispering wind, now a chorus of voices. Too soft to understand, but too menacing to ignore. Emma realized they were not alone in their terror. The house, with its dark history and hidden secrets, was a participant in this macabre dance. The entity they had awakened with their curiosity was not just in the house. It was the house itself, its every fiber infused with the rituals and tragedies of the past. The story pauses here, leaving Emma and her friends enveloped in the embrace of a house with a malevolent consciousness. Their next steps uncertain. The nature of the entity and the lady in white still shrouded in mystery. The true Easter horror stories of the town remain unresolved, with the fate of its visitors hanging in a delicate balance, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. in the heart of the darkness, with their flashlights flickering as if threatening to abandon them at this crucial moment. Emma and her friends felt the oppressive weight of the house's malevolent presence closing in. The brief glimpses of the elusive figure in white only added to the maelstrom of fear that threatened to overwhelm them. Amidst the chaos of their panicked thoughts, a plan began to form in Emma's mind. If the house itself was an extension of the entity, then perhaps there was a way to communicate with it, to appease it, or understand its desires. It was a desperate idea, but desperation had become their closest ally in this nightmare. Whispering her plan to her friends, they agreed to spread out, each taking a corner of the room in an attempt to surround the entity, to show it they were not just victims, but participants in this twisted game. Their movements were slow, deliberate, as if wading through an invisible morass that sought to hold them in place. As they took their positions, the house seemed to react, the air growing colder, the whispers louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to plead, warn, and threaten all at once. Emma raised her voice, her words slicing through the din. "We are not here to harm you. We only seek to understand, to help if we can." The response was immediate. The house shuddered, a low groan echoing through its bones, and then silence. It was as if the entity was considering her offer, weighing the sincerity of her words. In this moment of eerie calm, the figure in white appeared again, this time more clearly than before. It was a woman, her features sorrowful, her eyes pools of deep despair. She hovered just above the ground, her gaze fixed on Emma and her friends. And then, with a voice that was both haunting and heartbreakingly gentle, she spoke. "You cannot help what is already lost. The curse of this place is bound by blood and sacrifice. Each Easter, it demands its due. Your presence here has only strengthened it, given it form." The revelation struck them with the force of a physical blow. The entity was not just a remnant of a ritual gone wrong. It was sustained by the very fabric of the town's history, by the recurring tragedies that Easter brought with it. Emma, her resolve hardening, asked, "What can we do? There must be a way to break this cycle, to free this town and its people from this curse." The woman's gaze was filled with sorrow, a millennia of suffering etched into her ethereal features. The ritual that bound this curse must be undone, but the cost is more than you can bear. The warning hung in the air, a dire premonition of the challenges they would face. Emma and her friends, bound by a shared determination, knew they could not turn back now. The story of the true Easter horror was not just to be uncovered, but to be confronted, its dark legacy challenged. As they stood united, the figure in white faded, her warning echoing in their minds. The house, still alive with whispers and shadows, seemed to watch, waiting to see what its intruders would do next. The narrative breaks off here, leaving Emma and her companions at the threshold of a daunting journey, poised to challenge an ancient curse with uncertain outcomes. The true nature of the Easter horror still veiled in shadows, its resolution hanging tantalizingly out of reach, with the spectral warning of the lady in white lingering in the air. Emma and her friends understood the gravity of their situation The house, with its pulsating darkness, and the entity that seemed both a part of and apart from it, was a nexus of ancient energies and tragic histories. The task before them, to unravel and perhaps undo the ritual that had set this curse in motion, was daunting. Yet the resolve in their hearts was unwavering. They decided their first step must be to uncover more about the ritual itself. The diary of Jonathan Harker had provided some clues, but the details were maddeningly vague. They needed more. The town's abandoned library, a repository of its history and secrets, seemed the most logical place to start. As they prepared to leave the oppressive atmosphere of the house, a sudden chill swept through the room, the temperature plummeting in an instant. Their breaths became visible, hanging in the air like spectral omens. The house was reacting, trying to dissuade them, to keep its secrets buried within its walls. Ignoring the ominous signs, they pushed forward, finding the front door now mysteriously unlocked, as if the entity had decided to let them go. For now, the night outside was eerily silent, the moon casting long, sinister shadows that seemed to stretch and reach for them as they made their way through the deserted streets toward the library. The library stood at the edge of town, its Gothic architecture casting an imposing silhouette against the night sky. Its heavy oak doors creaked open with a groan, revealing rows upon rows of dust-covered books and manuscripts, the accumulated knowledge and lore of generations. They split up to cover more ground, each taking a section of the library, their flashlights casting pools of light in the overwhelming darkness. The search was painstaking, the ancient texts often cryptic and written in languages long forgotten. Hours passed, and frustration began to set in. Then, in the farthest corner of the library, under a pile of tattered maps and manuscripts, Emma found it, a leather-bound tome, its pages yellowed with age, titled Rituals and Lore of the Ancients. The book was filled with arcane knowledge, rituals for prosperity, for harvest, for life, and for death. As Emma flipped through the pages, a particular section caught her eye. The ritual of the crimson moon. A ritual performed under the rare crimson moon, which was said to grant immense power or dire consequences, depending on the purity of intent. The parallels to the diary entries were unmistakable. This was it. This had to be the ritual that had cursed the town. But as Emma read on, her heart sank. The ritual was complex, requiring specific artifacts, incantations, and most chillingly, a sacrifice. The final pages, detailing the means to reverse the ritual, were torn out, missing. The story halts here, with Emma and her friends at the cusp of understanding, yet thwarted by the missing pieces of the puzzle. The path forward is unclear, the dangers unknown, the entity, the lady in white, the town's cursed history. All these elements converge, weaving a tapestry of horror that remains unresolved, its dark threads trailing off into the shadows, awaiting the next chapter to be revealed. the specter of the woman in white's warning hanging over them, Emma and her friends understood the gravity of the task ahead. The air within the old house seemed to tighten around them, as if the very walls were listening, bracing for their next move. The group gathered in the center of the room, their flashlights now seeming like feeble beacons against the encroaching darkness. The house had become eerily quiet. The previous cacophony of whispers and groans silenced by the woman's ominous revelation. This stillness was more terrifying than any noise, a suffocating blanket of anticipation and dread. Emma broke the silence, her voice steady, despite the fear that gripped her heart. We need to find the origin of the ritual. Something in this house must give us a clue. The diary mentioned the elders. Perhaps there are records, something that can tell us how to undo what's been done. Nods of agreement met her words, and the group split up, each taking a section of the room, their eyes scanning for any detail, any scrap of paper or hidden compartment that might hold the key to unraveling the curse. As they searched, the house seemed to stir, an imperceptible shift in the atmosphere. Shadows moved just beyond the reach of their flashlights, and the temperature dropped, their breaths visible in the cold air. It was as if the house itself was aware of their intent and was marshaling its energies against them. In a dusty corner, beneath a loose floorboard, one of Emma's friends found a small, leather-bound book, its cover worn and its pages yellowed with age. With hands trembling from cold and fear, they pried the book open, revealing a detailed account of the town's history and, crucially, the origins of the Easter ritual. The book spoke of a pact made with an ancient entity, a desperate bid for prosperity that turned to horror as the true price of the bargain was revealed. The ritual, intended to bring bounty, instead brought a curse, one that tied the entity to the town, demanding a tribute each Easter. As they pieced together the information, a plan began to form. They needed to replicate the original ritual, but with the intent to sever the ties that bound the entity to this place. The risk was enormous. The book was clear that the balance of such forces was delicate. A misstep could exacerbate the curse, dooming them and the town to an even worse fate. The sound of a distant clock striking midnight broke their concentration. Time was slipping away, and with each passing moment, the entity grew stronger, feeding on the fear and darkness that pervaded the town. Gathering the few materials the book listed as necessary for the ritual, they prepared to confront the entity, to challenge the very darkness that enveloped the town. The shadows seemed to press closer, as if sensing the impending confrontation. As they began the ritual, the house trembled, a low rumble that grew in intensity until the very foundations seemed to shake. The air crackled with energy, a palpable force that raised the hairs on their necks and sent shivers down their spines. The story halts here, leaving Emma and her friends in the midst of an ancient ritual, their fate and that of the town hanging in the balance. The darkness around them is alive, charged with power and malice. The outcome of their bold challenge yet to be decided. The path ahead is fraught with danger. The resolution of the true Easter horror story still veiled in the shadows of the unknown. As the ritual reached its climax, the house convulsed as if in the throes of an unseen battle. Emma and her friends, bound by a circle of flickering candlelight, chanted the ancient words, their voices blending into a desperate plea for release. The air around them hummed with energy, a palpable tension that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, coalescing into forms both amorphous and terrifyingly sentient. The temperature plummeted further, their breaths now clouds of frost in the frigid air. The entity, roused to fury by their challenge, manifested as a swirling vortex of darkness, its core a piercing void that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Emma, her voice steady despite the chaos, led the chant, her friends' voices faltering as the entity bore down upon them, the sheer force of its will threatening to shatter their resolve. The candles flickered wildly, as if struggling to maintain their light against a suffocating darkness that sought to extinguish all hope. And then, at the moment when their courage teetered on the brink of despair, the pendant Emma wore, a family heirloom passed down through generations, rumored to possess protective qualities, flared with a brilliant light. The light, pure and unwavering, pierced the darkness, carving a path through the malevolent force that sought to consume them. The entity recoiled as if burned, its form dissipating, the shadows retreating as the light washed over the room, expelling the darkness to the farthest corners. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, the air warming as if the house itself had been freed from a long-held breath. In the sudden silence, the only sound was the ragged breathing of Emma and her friends, their relief palpable. The pendant dimmed, its light receding, but not before etching the room with an afterglow that spoke of ancient magic, of a battle fought and won. As dawn broke, casting a gentle light through the windows, the house seemed transformed, no longer a prison of fear and shadows. It stood as a testament to their courage, a reminder of the night they faced the true Easter horror and emerged victorious. They left the house as the sun rose, the town awakening around them, oblivious to the darkness that had threatened to consume it. Emma and her friends carried with them not just the tale of their harrowing night, but a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the unimaginable, challenged the very essence of fear, and had not been found wanting. The story concludes with the group standing at the edge of town, the house behind them, a silent guardian of their secret. They had confronted the darkness, unraveled the mystery of the true Easter horror, and in doing so, had freed the town from its curse. But in the light of day, as they looked back at the path they had walked, they understood that some shadows lingered, a reminder that some horrors, once awakened, never fully recede into the darkness from which they came.